Story 1. Sea air. It's idyllic. People crave it. To live beside the seaside is considered a privilege. Some sort of picturesque life that those living in cities can only dream of. That's the sort of thing they told me, my friends online. The part of growing up by the sea that others don't tell you about, or for the most part even consider, is the epic loneliness. The pool of friends and love interests is that much smaller, especially in the tiny ocean towns. Trying to satiate my need for some kind of human connection. I'm a horror fan. I've spent hours lurking this sub and a million other dark and interesting forums on the web. I won't name the place I found my friends. I wouldn't want others to go digging and end up in the same sort of predicament that I found myself in. After all, I'm sure most of you are just like me, merely looking for a scare before bed and someone to talk to. The friends that I made online were hardcore, obsessed with urban legends, unsolved mysteries, and finding the real, scariest shit that's ever been posted online. I suppose I was no different. Not at first, anyway. I revelled in the grainy video footage, and my favourites were the tales that you couldn't quite disprove. I wasn't alarmed about the obsessive direction my friends were taking until a guy with the username Loiters with Intent started posting to the forum. He got involved in the Discord and became a big player amongst the group. He claimed to have spent years proving urban legends real. As skeptical as the group could be, we all desperately wanted proof, for even one of the mysteries that we had obsessed over to be real would have vindicated all the hours we spent discussing them. Loiters with Intent was the kind of guy that no one wanted to admit they were a little scared of. Whilst the others were sharing memes and JonBenet theories, he was sending us freaky videos from the depths of the web, with gore and jumps that looked perfectly realistic. When he sent us instructions to access one of the websites for a video, I knew that it had to be some deep web shit. It didn't squash my curiosity. I'd always been fascinated by the idea of surfing the deep web, browsing the dark and mysterious corners of the internet to my heart's content. It had some type of sick allure, and I'd often found myself looking for, quote, worst things people have seen on the dark net threads over the years. I followed the instructions to the letter and was met with a mostly black web page with a tiny video box in the middle. In red letters above the extra small video box were the words, "A birth of a legend." I wondered if Loiters with Intent had made it himself in some poor attempt to scare us all. I wasn't very technological. I had only been able to access the website with instructions, so I had no idea how difficult or easy that might be. I pressed play, and the first thing I was confronted with was a beautiful girl. Man, she looked terrified, but she was so stunning. Long, wavy dark hair and deep brown eyes lured me in, but the terror that glazed them made me feel wholly uncomfortable. If the girl was acting, then she deserved an Academy Award before she ever said a word. The cameraman backed up a bit, and I could see that the girl was stood on an unfamiliar, empty beach. "Run, bitch," came a voice from behind the camera, a mocking and gloating man. "Please, it hurts so bad," the girl replied, voice cracking as she spoke directly into his camera. "If anyone's watching, please help me." She wore a tattered white dress, the sort of dress a girl like that would wear to a fancy party, but it looked like she had been away from the party for quite some time. There were rips exposing bruises that covered her whole, beautiful body. My heart broke as she attempted to run across the sand, tripping and stumbling as the cameraman laughed and mocked her. The beach in the video was huge, a vast expanse with no sign of reaching a town or land. As the camera panned round, I could see that the sand stretched for miles. If the guy wanted to hurt her, then she had no chance of escaping. He was allowing her a head start purely for his own amusement. The sick f***. Discord notifications pinged my phone on the desk as the others made their way through the video. What the hell, man? What is this, Loiters? Is this shit real? Ha! Nice try, but that's definitely fake. I remained fixated on the video. The girl trying to run and hide in the open landscape with a choice between miles of sand or the thick barrier of rock pools that met the water. It was no choice at all, really. In her position, I probably would have just laid down and accepted my fate. The camera turned around to face the cameraman, fully clad in a balaclava. He lifted the mask just enough so that the viewers could see his ravenous smile. Well done to the highest bidder. This is for you. He walked towards the girl, his steps making a lot more progress than her frantic, panicked running. He wigged a screwdriver in front of the camera as he approached her, and she fell to the ground. Watching the video from the cameraman's point of view felt voyeuristic, like it was me standing above the poor woman with a weapon, like I'd taken her there. I winced hard as he brought the screwdriver down with force and plunged it into her leg, then her arm, then her other leg. He hit every non-deadly area possible before finally sticking it deep into her eye, hovering as it forced its way out of the socket like jelly, and the tip of the metal implement presumably reached her brain. He dragged and threw her body into a deep rock pool and turned the camera to face him one more time, balaclava still rolled up above his mouth. I hope you bottom feeders like that. Time for some real bottom feeders to enjoy her show. He laughed evilly, relishing what he'd done. I felt tears roll down my cheeks. It was too realistic. I felt responsible for not saving her, for her death, for making my way through an entire snuff film. I felt dirty. Then the video took a turn. The smile turned to an expression of shock before the killer dropped the camera. Sounds of screaming overtook, and I could hear my Discord notifications going wild, but I didn't stop to check them. I couldn't tear myself away from the screen. The screaming ended promptly, and the camera shook as it was lifted to focus on the body of the cameraman, still clad in his balaclava, but now lying face up on the pool rocks. I wish I could say he suffered like the girl did, but he was certainly dead. Most alarmingly, his entire face was covered with small baby crabs, nipping away at chunks of mask, flesh, and then raw skin. I felt sick. Fought back the bile and pushed my computer chair about a foot back from the screen. The camera turned around once more to face the new videographer. She was just as beautiful as before, despite her dark waves being a little distressed. Parts of her squished eye were smeared around the socket, and inside were more of the tiny little crabs. They weren't consuming her the same way as they were the killer, just decorating her face. She smiled, a wide, unnatural smile, and then spoke. "You should have tried to help me. Instead, you just watched. I'll see you soon." Then it went black. I tried to steady myself a little. I'd seen what probably amounted to thousands of creepy and dark videos on the web, but never anything like that. Everything I'd seen before still had a grain of skepticism about it, but something about what I'd just seen had felt so real. I wondered if it had been a live feed, and if it had, was she really addressing me? Because I felt like she had. I lifted my phone to check the notifications, see what the others were saying about it. There were a ton of messages, mostly expressing pure shock and confusion, quite a few insisting that it just could not be real. The only one that stood out to me was a single message from Loiters with Intent. The message read, "This video was part of a live stream on the deep web as the result of an auction held by a hitman. The winning bidder chose the girl from the party and the murder weapon. Rumours on those forums state that every viewer of the original stream found themselves drawn to the beach and disappeared mysteriously not long after watching. I never clicked play, but I knew you would. Prove it real, friends. Beware the crab woman." His message had made most of them laugh. They couldn't get over the ridiculousness of the crab woman, and, in all honesty, every single one of us were desensitized to that shit. Some more than others. Monsters and creature features were something of a joke in our community, a subgenre to be mocked. A few of them even praised the video's production values, asking if Loiters had any more, but hours passed and no new message from him appeared. I didn't say anything else either. Something about the video made everything we were interested in seem dirty and sinister somehow. I couldn't get that beautiful girl out of my mind, the sheer terror in her eyes at the start. Even if it was fake, those eyes would haunt my dreams. I thought about what Loiters had said too, and to be honest, living by the sea made me a bit nervous. As far as I knew, none of my other anonymous friends lived this close to the ocean. They could joke about an urban legend that suggested they would end up on a beach dead without any real consequence. I was creeped out, and for me, it was a little too close to home, so I did what I could do to push it out of my mind. I spent a few days watching Disney movies and browsing much fluffier places on the internet. I muted my Discord notifications. I just didn't want to talk about creepy shit for a while. It encouraged me to get out, and I started to take daily runs, attempting to improve my fitness in the hope I could maybe make some real life friends. Thankfully, it worked. It had been weeks since I'd thought about the girl, the man in the balaclava, and the horde of tiny crabs that ate them both. Loiters with Intent and his freaky message had been all but forgotten about. Until a few hours ago. I left for my run today, just like always. I ran alongside the cliff top and past the bandstand. I don't know at what point I climbed down the stairs to the beach, but I did. I found myself there, exhausted. I did what any human does, and I tried to rationalize it in my head. The beach didn't look like the one in the video. It wasn't a vast expanse, and there were other people on it. There were steps to the left and a slope to the right. I convinced myself that my forgotten journey was my mind just playing tricks on me. The video had bothered me so much that I'd ended up at the beach as some sort of sick subconscious joke. That is when I started to record this out. I thought maybe if I processed what I saw, then I would be able to get over it. It was therapeutic at first, sitting here in the sea air typing out my experience. Cathartic, even. But the last time I looked up, I realized that something was seriously wrong. There aren't any steps to the left anymore, or slope to the right. The cliff top has all but disappeared, and all I can see for miles is sand. The people have gone too, all but one that is. And I'm sure I can see a girl sitting on the rock pools. Story 2. I had just started a summer job where I was basically a custodian cleaning classrooms in preparation for the upcoming school year. My dad worked for the town's district, so he was able to get me this job. I was the youngest one there, as I'm only 20, and there are a handful of people worked with me. They were usually off doing other tasks like waxing the floors or covering up foul writing on the walls with paint. The schools were completely empty besides the staff who was cleaning. Things were going fine my first couple of weeks. For the most part, I was on my own, wiping down desks and dusting while listening to music. It was nice, and I enjoyed not having someone on my ass all day telling me what to do. After I had finished cleaning the middle school, the head custodian had sent me and another woman, we'll call her Karen, who was my co-worker, to go start cleaning the high school. She was a slacker who'd often go out to smoke cigarettes, but was a really nice lady. She didn't really care what I did and always was off doing whatever she wanted, so yeah, basically, I was alone. Again, I didn't mind because I liked the freedom, but it was taking up the bulk of the work. A few days had gone by and I finished cleaning a couple of hallways. It was time to move to the basement where the robotics and woodworking classes were. I didn't think anything of it until I got down there. I noticed light was peeking through under the doorway of the classroom. The windows of the class were covered with shades. I found this really odd since it was summer and no one was in the building besides Karen and I. I walked over and peeked in the door window. The lamp was on at the desk, but no one was inside. I proceeded then to knock, to no answer. After turning the knob, I realized the door was locked, so I used my key to open the door. A musty smell flooded my nose. I decided to scope out the room. Maybe someone had forgotten to turn the lamp off. I disregarded that idea when I noticed the computer at the teacher's desk was on. The screen looked weird. I'd never seen this layout before. The website was all black with red writing on it. It also had a chat box. I didn't have time to read the chat because a sudden voice came from the doorway. "Can I help you?" It was a man, maybe in his early 40s, about 6 feet. "Oh, sorry, I'm just cleaning the classrooms and I didn't know if anyone was in here," I said in an embarrassed tone. "Ah, so I see. Well, I appreciate that, but don't worry about it in here. I'm working on a few things, so sawdust is going to get everywhere again after you clean anyways." He said this in a very strange way, like he was hiding something. He walked over and sat at his desk while closing the browser. "Okay, no problem." I then proceeded to the door. "Wait, could I ask you a favor?" he said in a delirious way. Yeah, sure." I didn't really know what he was about to ask and I couldn't find myself to say no. I just wanted to get out of there as I was already pretty creeped out. "I have this petition. It's to get more funding for the extracurricular classes like art and woodworking." He sounded so uncertain, as if he just made that up out of thin air. Sure." I paused for a moment when he handed me the paper. It only had 2 other names on it. The petition required a full name, phone number, email, and address. I immediately felt uncomfortable, but I didn't know how to decline, so I just added my information. "Thank you so much, dear. You have a beautiful bone structure, by the way," he said in such a creepy way. Thanks." I grabbed my cleaning supplies and got the hell out of there. After that experience, I didn't really put much thought into it. Yes, he was creepy, but I didn't really have much evidence to persuade myself that he was out to get me or something. Until I started running into him throughout the school. It became pretty frequent. It's as though he was watching me. And now, I was concerned. I dismissed it because he'd just smile at me or wave if I saw him. Maybe I was overreacting. I mean, he was a teacher there after all. Still, my gut feeling was telling me that something was not right. Weeks went on, and I started to notice him less and less. I only had a few more weeks at this job, and then back to college I go. One day, the boss let everyone out early since it was almost 100 degrees. I got home and decided to hang out with some friends. It was a group of us, about 5 or 6. My boyfriend's brother joined us this time, which was unusual since he's not really a social person. He is really into technology, so he's always on his computer, which he built himself. He's also good at hacking and stuff like that. Anyways, that day he told me he needed to talk to me and that it was serious. I was conceited because we weren't close, so it must have been legit. He brought me into my friend's living room and pulled out his laptop. To my surprise, he was on the deep web. So, you are up for bid on the deep web? He hesitated. Wait, what? I knew how the deep web worked. I would often listen to horror stories, but I'd never been on it, so how would my info even be out there? Then, it suddenly clicked. The web page matched the one I saw in the classroom a month back. I had also given my info to that guy. My heart felt like it dropped to my stomach. I explained this to my boyfriend's brother. He advised me to call the police immediately, which is what we did. They did an investigation on the teacher and found the activity on his computer. Not only that, but he had several girls' informations along with pictures. Some of the girls were minors too. There were also wooden contraptions they found in his home, in which he probably made in the shop. He probably planned to use them on these girls. Or me. I was disgusted, but relieved that he was caught. I often wonder what would have happened if the page was never discovered. Would he have kidnapped me and killed me online for these sick people? I don't know, and I don't want to know. I changed my number and moved since the incident. This just goes to show you can never give out your personal information. Story 3. I had always been aware of the deep web. You hear the craziest, most messed up stories from people who have the balls to explore it. Websites that involve human experimentation, hiring a hitman, and even watching people through their own security cameras. It's messed up, but honestly, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't just slightly interested. Now, just to point out, there was no malicious intent behind my exploration of the deep web. I was just curious to see if it really was as bad as people said it was. The first thing I stumbled upon was a website extremely centered around death, which gave me a really uneasy feeling, so I didn't hang around that webpage very long. It takes quite a bit to freak me out, so it's safe to say I was a little surprised that I couldn't even stomach the first website I clicked on. But hey, it's not supposed to be all unicorns and rainbows, right? Next, I clicked a website that was dedicated to watching people through security cameras. Most of the screens showed empty living rooms and patios. Some of them showed oddly filled rooms, like rooms that were packed with stuffed animals, and another that was eerily decorated with Christmas lights and fake Santa Claus statues. Another screen showed a young woman doing yoga. That one had a lot of views. I didn't watch that one very long. Something inside me felt ill and just wrong. Like what I was doing was sickening. I shook my head, blinking away any more curiosity before I hovered my mouse over the tiny X to close the window. Right before I pressed the mouse, I saw a blue link under a black screen that said, "Proceed with caution." I bit down on my back teeth, yelling internally to leave the page. Don't click the link, it's not worth it. It could be murder, and then would that make me an accomplice? Or what if it was someone skinning an animal or some shit like that? But then again, what if it wasn't? I don't know what the hell propelled me to move my mouse away from the window, hovering it over the link instead, but that is where I ended up. My curiosity always got the best of me, and no matter how twisted my stomach felt, or how strong the feeling of dread was that lingered right over my head, I had to know. I really just had to know what the link led to, or I would go crazy until I figured it out. So, I pressed my mouse down and watched the link turn purple, felt my mouth go dry, and watched as the screen slowly loaded. The The page was just comprised of a large screen, like the security camera page, only it was just one. The room was concrete. It was dark. There must have been a night vision camera or something, because everything had a weird blue-green tinge, but you could tell there was little to no light. There was a dark liquid on the floor in a medium-sized puddle. I told myself it was just gasoline. Don't ask me why. Movement in the far right of the screen caught my attention, and I immediately perked in my desk chair, inching my face closer to the screen of my laptop. It looked like an arm, like someone's forearm. They were standing there, not really moving, but subtly swaying, just enough to not look completely still. "Hey," I said before shaking my head and slapping my mouth shut. "Stupid." Then the person walked. They walked over towards the left of the screen. I felt my stomach knot, felt my throat tingle and tighten, bile rising in the back of my throat. I knew my mouth was open, gaping, and my eyes were wide, face screwed up into an expression of pure disgust. It was a young woman. She looked like she couldn't be older than 25 or so. Long, dark and dirty hair was in tangles, like she'd been pulling at it. Her leg was dragging, her other skinny leg doing most of the work as she limped weakly. Her head was down, looking at the floor, and the sound of her dragging her foot across the concrete echoed in my silent room. I didn't think it could get any worse. I was so wrong. Suddenly, the woman raised her head, and it looked like it weighed a ton on her tiny body. I hadn't noticed it before, only able to barely make out her side profile, but now it was as clear as day. She looked around, eyes watering with tears and black makeup streaming down her face. Small strands of bloody thread were intertwined in her lips, messily tied, locking them together. Dark blood stained her chin, probably from where she tried desperately to open her mouth to scream before realizing she couldn't. Her dainty fingers were stained as well, the same color as the puddle on the concrete. My whole body felt weak. My stomach was sick. I tried to tell myself it was fake, that it was all a big hoax. My eyes scanned to the bottom left of the screen. 5,623. Yes, 5,623 people were watching. Unable to fight it any longer, I ran straight into the bathroom, puking my insides into the toilet bowl. Everything in me felt disgusting, wrong, and twisted. Once I was finally done, I laid on the floor of the bathroom, letting the cool tiles try to soothe my burning body. My head was spinning. I kept repeating to myself over and over in my head that I shouldn't have clicked the link. I should have left. I should have just closed the window and told my inner curiosity to go and f*** itself. Instead, I was laying on the floor, the bathroom reeking of vomit, and my mind a complete mess over that. What the hell was I supposed to do? Should I get the link and send it to the police? Should I call them now? My first instinct was to copy and paste the link just in case, then call the police and inform them of what was happening. Maybe they could trace the IP address or something. Maybe they would recognize the girl and know where to start looking. Maybe I could save her life. I mean, I'd feel really dumb if this was all fake just to get viewers, but I wasn't about to gamble. Not with what was at stake. I ignored the dizzy feeling flooding my head as I jumped up, grabbing the doorknob and twisting it a bit too harshly. When I flung the door open, my phone buzzed in my pocket, scaring the living shit out of me. I stopped mid-panic and picked it up with shaky hands. I saw my girlfriend's name and immediately slid to answer. My voice was a complete wreck, my eyes finding the screen where the girl shrunk down to the ground. The sound of her cries bouncing around the room, making my body feel rigid. I had nothing left to throw up, but I still felt so sick. Madeline, you're not going to believe what I just saw. What? Are you okay? Have you been crying? No, I'm not okay, I answered, averting my eyes from the screen. I know you said to stay away from the deep web, but... Are you kidding me? Her voice went from caring to mad in a split second. I told you to stay away from that place. You never listen to me. You never do. There's a girl, I said weakly. She's trapped in some basement or something. Her mouth is like sewn shut. There's blood all over her face and hands. I don't know what to do, Madeline. The woman's cries got louder, more desperate, but muffled. I'm so sorry. Close it out, clear your history, and never go back there again. I'm not kidding. But should I call the... No! Her voice was stern now. You don't know if it's bullshit. It's probably staged to gain disgusting viewers, apparently like yourself. People do it all the time. That's why I said it'd be best if you just stayed away from there. You could get yourself into a lot of trouble. I didn't say anything, wordlessly walking over to the desk. My hands shook as I raised my mouse to the small X once more. My eyes watched the number of viewers slowly tick higher and higher before I closed the window. I felt even worse than before. Okay, we could just file a report tomorrow just in case, but for now, go to sleep and stay away. I can't believe you even went there in the first place. I didn't have the energy to argue with her. Guilt plagued my whole body, drowning me. It was all I could feel. I told her good night, that I was sorry and that I loved her before I hung up and made my way to the couch to sleep. Or try to sleep. It didn't feel right even being in my bedroom or being anywhere near my computer. Not while that girl was still trapped, unable to scream for help, unable to talk at all. I know it could have been fake, but was that really a risk I was willing to take? I looked up some Google searches over what was fake on the deep web, and read multiple stories about staged webcam videos which made me feel a little bit better. It didn't make the sick, guilty feeling go away though. It's safe to say that I didn't get much sleep. Every time I closed my eyes or even began to drift off, I would see the woman's face, the thread laced into her lips, the blood staining her mouth, her fingers and the floor. I continued to grow more and more anxious and uneasy, deciding that maybe getting out of this house, heading over to the local CVS and picking up some melatonin might help. I threw my blanket off, slid on my shoes and grabbed my keys and wallet from the nightstand. The cool air felt amazing, and it did wonders to calm the whirlwind of thoughts in my head. I went to check the time, realising I'd left my phone at home. Not a huge deal. The store was only a few minutes away from my house. I ended up buying melatonin and a stronger sleeping pill just in case those didn't work. I also got a pack of bottled water to help rehydrate after I vomited up all the contents in my stomach earlier. By the time I got home, I felt much, much better, which lasted about 3 seconds before I noticed that my front door was wide open. Now I may have been in a state of shock and panic, but I never ever leave my front door open or even unlocked. My heart immediately began to race. I got out of my car, closing the door quietly and unlocking my trunk, grabbing the crowbar that I keep in there. "Who's there?" I yelled into the house, waiting for any noise. "Who is in there?" My own voice was shaking and weak. I was met with complete silence. Keeping the crowbar up and ready to strike, I walked to the couch and felt for my phone. As soon as I found it, I hit the emergency button and waited until I got a hold of a 911 operator, letting her know that I think my house was just broken into. She told me the police would be on their way. After checking around the house for anything odd, I decided to give my girlfriend a call, letting her know what had happened. The phone rang, and then rang some more. After getting her voicemail, I hung up, knowing she'd probably be asleep this late at night. I waited about 20 or so minutes for the police to show up and walked around with them like a scared puppy as they checked every room. They ended up just having me fill out a report telling me they'll keep patrol cars in the area just in case anyone else gets a hit. As they were leaving, I checked to see if Madeline had called back yet, but there weren't any missed calls. I, however, did notice several outgoing calls to her cell phone. Outgoing call to Madeline, 3:12 am, 3:14 am, 3:17 am, and 3:20 am, and then another one at 3:56, which was around the time I'd gotten home. My mind went into an automatic panic, knowing for a fact that I did not make those calls. I quickly checked my texts, reading one I'd apparently sent out at 3:23 am. "Hey, can't sleep, gotta come over, mind leaving the back door unlocked so I can get in?" I didn't send that message. My stomach dropped, my heart thudded loudly in my chest as I noticed her reply directly underneath. "Sorry, I was sleeping. Thanks for waking me up, by the way. Lose your key again? It's unlocked. Don't be too late." Without a second thought, I jumped up, running to lock all the doors and windows in my house, keeping the crowbar tight in my hand as I ran to my car. I drove as fast as my little Civic would allow all the way to her house, ignoring any stoplights. It only took me 3 minutes to get there, but I still knew it'd be too late. I made my way to her back door, feeling every cell in my body burn when I saw it was wide open. My face was hot, my hands were shaking, but I stepped in, crowbar raised like a bat, ready to swing. I tried to keep my emotions at bay as I looked around her dark house. "Madeline," I called out. "Are you okay?" Nothing. Silence. "Madeline!" A small scream came from her bedroom just up the stairs. My legs jerked to a run as I flew up the stairs, slamming her door open. I looked at her empty bed, her empty room. Confused, I heard the scream again. Only this time, I heard that it was coming through her computer monitor. I felt numb as I looked at the screen, noticing the same website I saw earlier, only instead of one woman, I now saw two. The first was lying on the floor, not moving, in that puddle of dark liquid. I recognized the second girl just as I had recognized her voice. My heart shattered as I saw her face streaked in blood. The same threading was sewn into her eyelids, locking them shut. Her scream hit my bones, surrounded my body. It was all I could hear. Her face was twisted in pure terror. I cried pathetically as her voice began to go out, continuing to grow weaker and rasped. I locked my jaw, picking up my cell and dialing 911 for the second time. Only this time it barely rang once before the deep, gravelly voice of another man answered. "You should not have called." Chills shot down my body, and I heard the phone thud as it hit the carpeted floor. My breath hitched in my throat as I bent to pick it up, hanging up the call and racing down the stairs. How did he do that? How did he redirect my call away from the police? I felt my heart race as I darted out of her back door in a frenzy as I sprinted to the closest house. I pounded the door, screaming at the top of my lungs until the neighbour opened it, her face tired, confused and scared. She let me in, and I explained what happened through frantic tears. I'm recording this on my phone to post as we both try to get a hold of the cops, but neither of our calls are going through, and neither is her landline. I think someone is messing with our cellular signal, and they may have cut her line, but we're going to keep trying. I'm scared for me, I'm scared for my girlfriend, and I'm scared for my neighbour. I don't know what's going to happen to me. If you don't hear from me again, please take this advice and this experience to heart. Stay away from the deep web. Please, please, please stay away from the deep web.